know your name, I swear I do. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, what did you say? I've known you for how long? Your face is so familiar, but no name comes to mind. Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last?
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm Lori LeBay, the host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks. I hope you all had a great holiday, and we are just raring to go and getting ready for the new year here. Before I introduce our guest today, I always like to just tell everybody a little bit about Alzheimer Speaks because we're always getting new listeners. So, to let you know who we are and what we do, here goes. Bottom line, we are an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We truly believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, that we're going to be able to remove a lot of the stigmas attached to dementia and help those who are currently living with it live a better, more fulfilled life, as well as those who are caring for them. At our core, we also believe that collaboration is the only way that we're going to win this battle. And I know it's working thanks to each and every one of you. You see, your likes, your clicks, and your shares have spread the voice of Alzheimer Speaks. And our voice isn't just us, it's everyone. We want to hear from those living with the disease. We want to hear from loved ones and friends who are caring for people who have dementia. We want to hear from professionals. We've had researchers on the show. We've had singers and songwriters and movie directors and authors. Everybody has a voice, and this is where we would love for you to share it. So if you're listening right now, we'd appreciate it if you would just like and share the show with others. That's how the word is passed. And again, by doing that, you are helping all of us because we all have people in our own spheres that are dealing with this disease that may not have come out of the closet yet, might not feel comfortable, and we need to make sure that they feel comfortable and supported. So thank you so much. I want to also give a shout out to the American Senior Magazine. If you're not familiar with them, you might want to check them out. You can get an actual deal on their subscription if you go to alzheimerspeaks.com. But what I love about their magazine is it's nice big print, great articles. They've got some games and things in there to play, but it's just a really nice resource and well put together, well thought out magazine. Also have to give a shout out to the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation out in Arizona. I just love them to death. They do a lot of holistic things. So if you're into meditation and diet, definitely go ahead and look them up. Also, the Call Alert Center, which is a wonderful thing to have in place if you have a loved one with dementia, and in case they would wander, we never know when that might happen, you will be set and ready for the circumstances. My co-host today is Lori Shear, and I just absolutely adore her. Finally got to meet her when we went on our dementia-friendly cruise. So welcome, Lori. How are you today?
Well, thank you, Lori. I am doing well. And so excited to be here with you and Dr. Potts, both of who I just totally admire.
Wonderful. Do you want to give people just a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. At the age of 55, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and FTD, which is frontotemporal dementia. Over the past few years, I've gotten very involved in a lot of advocacy work and mentoring people who are newly diagnosed and trying to help them through the beginning of this diagnosis, which is the first year is so hard. And so I try and help people that were just diagnosed to make it through.
Wonderful. And like you mentioned, our guest today is Dr. Daniel Potts. He is a neurologist, an author, an educator, and an advocate for those living with dementia, along with their care partners. He's a one amazing gentleman, and we're just thrilled to have him back on the show. He has written and or edited several books, included A Pocket Guide for Alzheimer's Caregivers, Finding Joy in Alzheimer's, Seasons of Caring, and Treasure for Alzheimer's, amongst many others. He practices neurology at the VA Medical Center in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and he is on the faculty of the Alabama Capstone College of Medicine and the UAB School of Medicine as well. And then also at the University of South Alabama College of Medicine. So welcome, Dr. Potts. How are you today?
Lori, I'm great, and it's a pleasure to be back on your show. And hello, Lori, as well. So we're just very happy to be back with you today.
Well, good. I just love your work, and I can't say enough good things, about your books and the work that you do, and how highly respected you are in the arena of dementia. Your name is way up top there, and it's just lovely to have you back on the show. So again, thank you so much for being with us. Before we kind of go into our line of questioning, I always ask every guest this question, and for some of those that may not know you, can you just tell people, have you been personally touched by dementia in your circle, in your family or friends?
Yes, Lori, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to talk about this. First of all, I remember every time I hear you talk about what Alzheimer's Speaks is all about, I'm moved and I'm impressed, and I'm just convinced that you are leading the path for us along this advocacy way by all that you do. And so thank you for what you do, and it's a privilege to be back. But yes, I've been touched personally by Alzheimer's disease and dementia. My father, Lester, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at about the age of 70 back in about the year 2001, and he passed away in 2007. Dad was a wonderful guy, and I'll talk more about that during the show here. But his story of really triumph, I call it triumph over the disease, because of the power of his spirit and his art and his creativity, has really been my motivation to do what I do now. But yes, we've seen it in all sorts of ways, Lori, and it's just an honor to be out there trying to do what little I can do to try to change the stigma and provide some compassion.
Well, great. Now, with your dad, the book that you wrote, The Pocket Guide for Alzheimer's Caregivers, has some information in there about his artistic abilities and kind of how they blossomed once he was diagnosed. Can you explain that to people? I mean, did he piddle with art, or was he really big into it, or did it just kind of happen after the fact?
Well, that's so interesting, because Lori, Dad, we knew of no artistic ability that he had. Literally, Dad was a very utilitarian child of the Depression era, a wonderful worker. He used his hands a lot for work. He loved woodworking, but we didn't know he had any ability for visual art, watercolor, or anything else. So it was a complete surprise when Dad attended an adult daycare called Caring Days, and was exposed to various therapies, expressive arts therapies there, one of them being art, and that Dad brought home his first watercolor to Mother. Mother saw it, a little hummingbird, And she said, Lester, honey, who did that for you? It's so pretty. I did it myself, he said. Oh, she said, did you trace it? Mother had never seen, nor had any of us seen any ability coming out. And so, Lori, it was a complete surprise. And we can talk about some reasons that I think in his case it came out. But just floored us to see this.
Wow. Yeah, that's, we're hearing more about the arts and how it just connects with people with dementia. Why do you think that is?
Well, and now there's been a lot of work that's been done and some study about this. I think one of the reasons is that the expressive arts, art of any type, enable us to bypass some of the roadblocks that are laid by dementia in terms of our ability to use language, verbiage to express our story and to express our emotions. As you know, dementia can tend to rob us of that ability. So we have to find another outlet. We have a story. You know, Maya Angelou said there's nothing worse, I'm paraphrasing, than an untold story inside you. You got to get your story out, and the expressive arts help us to do that. But they also help us to deal with issues that we're having a hard time dealing with in this disease. We have to work through things, and it becomes much more difficult to work through them. Well, the arts provide a venue to do that. That's just one of the many ways that it works, I think.
Mm-hmm. Lori, do you have any comment on that?
No, I think it's awesome that your dad found a new venue to reach towards, because it's difficult when we have dementia. We frequently lose some of the abilities that we had, whether it's art or music. But then frequently we also reach out and find some new avenues that do help us to communicate. And I think it's just really fascinating that your dad became so good at art.
Lori, it's amazing, and I just want to. My hat goes off to you for what you are doing and for the courage you have in advocacy, teaching us about what it's like and demonstrating ways that you can move beyond. And I will say this: had it not been for people around Dad, his care partners, that were very compassionate and very enabling, and really showing him great deference and support and encouragement, he would have probably not been able to find that venue. You know, he was provided and surrounded with the kind of support and care that we certainly hope everyone can get to, and unfortunately everyone can't. But it enabled his voice to come out, and it's so powerful.
Yeah, it really is, and it's just such a, I would think those gifts of that, the work of art that he has done are just so precious to family and friends.
It's like his life story came out in art at a time when he couldn't share it anymore. We have early childhood memories, some things that even the family didn't know about, that Dad painted about in these paintings, and we're left with that. It's like looking at a picture of his early life.
Oh wow, that's very interesting. Given your situation and your journey with your dad, how has that helped you or influenced you in your medical practice and your philosophy of care for those with dementia?
Well, it's been so powerful for me that it's almost sort of hard to encapsulate. I think what the main thing that it did for me was to show me that a human being is still a human being with great dignity and capability and expressive ability, and that the disease can't take that away. It's imparted. The personhood is something can't be stolen, and so I, as a care partner and as a physician, as a healthcare provider, I need to be able to look for that. I need to always keep my eyes open for that personhood and its expression, and I need to be very aware that this is a human being, that nothing can change that. And so compassion and empathy and an enabling attitude for that is huge. And so now I look at people who have conditions like this, and I see my dad, and I see the incredible power of the person that still resides in that human being. So I always need to be deferent to that.
Well, that's really interesting. Have you noticed the influence your dad's had on you? Have you seen that rub off on some of your colleagues at all?
Well, yes, I have, and to be quite honest, and I've learned a lot from those colleagues as well. I think I've been fortunate to have been taught by many wonderful physicians, and have worked with many wonderful ones, and so I've learned from them. But yes, I have seen it rub off, and I will say that one of the greatest callings that I think I have now is to educate my own colleagues in the medical profession about that very thing. I think that one of the ways that, and I'm speaking for myself too, one of the ways that we perhaps are not doing a good job of helping people live well with dementia, is that we don't put ourselves in their shoes, and we don't have the type of compassion that we should. For instance, in office visits, many people with dementia report to me that there was a lack of compassion demonstrated in the clinic when, say, they were given the diagnosis. There were not enough resources talked about. That they were not treated, they were not communicated with as a person. The communication was with the care partner, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And I think we can do a better job of trying to treat people with dignity as we interact with them in the clinic or in the hospital.
I would agree. Lori, well, I know you've got some thoughts along that line. Would you like to share?
I do. And Dr. Potts, I had the privilege of seeing you firsthand with your compassion and your dignity that you give those of us living with dementia. And kudos to you, because you're very rare to find. Because it's true, most of us that get the diagnosis are told something to the effect of, go home, get your affairs in order, and see an elder care attorney, and, oh, by the way, come back in 6 months and give me another $100. And that's pretty much the way the diagnosis goes. But I appreciate people like you and Lori who are so much willing to reach out and include people with dementia in your research and your study in everything that you do, so that our voices can be heard and we can say, hey, you don't need to treat us like that. So I so much appreciate both of you and what you do with that and for your compassion. It's hard, it's difficult when you're sitting in a doctor's office and all they tell you is you're dying, and that's it. Whereas there's so many resources out there like Dementia Action Alliance and Dementia Mentors and so many more avenues that could help people, but you're not given that resource.
Very true. And I think that that's something that is changing, thankfully. I think the medical field is looking at this a little bit more seriously in terms of how people are dealt with and how this diagnosis is given to people. Do you feel that you're seeing some changes, Danny, in the field as a whole, in terms of a little bit more compassion?
I do, Lori, and I'll harken back there, as Lori mentioned, the Dementia Action Alliance, and of course we're all familiar with that organization. And I was fortunate to be able to attend the conference this past year, and as I've told people, one of the most powerful parts was the panel discussion of people living with dementia who were asked, what was it like to get the diagnosis? And to a person, they all talked about what a terrible experience it was. Well, it was very embarrassing for me as a healthcare provider to even hear that and to think about it. And so one of the things that I've tried to do since then is to get the word out about how we need to do a better job. And Dr. Neelam Agarwal and I, she's a colleague from Rush University, we're going to actually do a presentation at the American Academy of Neurology meeting in Los Angeles in April, where we address this issue with neurologists, and we're going to have a panel there, very similar to the one that was at the DAA conference, and we hope that we can add some credence and provide some education about this. And I'll tell you, Lori, it wouldn't be happening if it weren't for people like you who courageously told your stories and tell your stories about your interface with the healthcare, the healthcare profession. It's just so important.
I agree. I think that's really exciting to hear that's going to be happening. Lori, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I was just curious. How long was your dad able to do his art? You said he passed in 2007. How long did he maintain that ability to express himself that way? And also, when he was drawing, were you able to talk to him about the things that he was drawing, and was he able to explain them?
So, good questions. He was able to express himself through art for about, I'm going to say, maybe 4 years. He died in 2007, and the last things that he probably drew were sometime around 2006. And those were they were things like circles within a circle, But even though we look at that and we think, wow, that's kind of sort of simplistic. No, for him, I think it was very important because it provided calm. It provided a calm activity, for him. So 4 years he was able to do that, even into late stage. The other thing is that looking back, I wish we had been able to talk to him more about what he was painting. But he was very severely affected with aphasia, so he couldn't get his words out even from moderate on through. So some of the things he painted, we asked him about them. We knew what they were because we could figure it out, and all he could do is point and cry or smile or something like that. In other words, he was expressing emotion. He would put his hand on some of the images as we were talking, and he gave us some emotional expression that we knew that he knew what they were, you see. But no, we couldn't talk to him a whole lot about what he was painting.
Okay. Interesting. That brings me to another thing that I'd really like to discuss with you. Well, we got a little playback there. That was kind of strange. I'm interested, Danny, in having you talk about Bringing Art to Life program and where that is at and how that has happened.
Yes, I'd love to, Lori. So after Dad passed away, actually kind of before, we began to say, you know what, we've got to pay this forward. I mean, people have been so good to Dad and give him these opportunities. We want to do this kind of thing for others. And so we started a foundation called Cognitive Dynamics. And the mission of that foundation is to bring expressive arts to people living with dementia and their care partners, and also to enable storytelling, so to facilitate storytelling. And so back in 2011, we partnered with the University of Alabama Honors College to start a class called Art to Life, which is really the Bringing Art to Life program, the way it started. And so we have 15 students a semester, and we pair them with people living with dementia, about 3 students to a person. And we, over the course of that semester, we first of all teach the students about dementia, about art therapy and other expressive therapies. We go through simulated dementia experiences like the virtual dementia tour, and we'll be starting up with some technologically advanced simulations here in the future. And we prepare the students about how to interact with people. And then they meet their participants, and over the next 8 to 9 weeks, they have art therapy together every week, and they form relationships, and they become friends by the end of the semester. And then we create a book about the person, their life. It's a legacy book, a leather-bound legacy book from lifebio.com. And then we have a big celebration at the end of the semester and give them their books and all their art. And it's just a lovely experience. The kids write every week, Lori, about their experiences. And these writings have taught me so much, have taught us so much about the impact of the program on these young people, and more so the impact of the relationship, being in a relationship with a person living with dementia. It changes these kids forever, and it makes many of them want to then go into fields where they will be working with folks and where they'll be able to make a difference in advocacy. So it's something that I'm real excited about, and I'll tell you, Lester would be mighty proud of that his art and his story were the inspiration for this. I just know it. So I love doing it.
Oh, neat. Now, when you talk students, what age are they?
So we've done the program with both college students from 18 to 22, but we recently launched a pilot of this program in Chicago with high school students at Northside College Prep School, and we partnered with the Chicago Methodist Senior Services there in Chicago, and so we used high school students as well. And so it works with all of those ages, and really it would work with any age, I think, provided they're mature enough to be able to interact, and do the writing and coursework.
Mhm. Oh, that's wonderful. Is there a cost to families who are involved in this, or is this through grant funding, or?
Right. No, there's not. There's not a cost. It's all provided. And we've had grants, for instance, for the Alzheimer's Foundation of America has awarded us a couple of grants for the program, and we've had donors, and we're always looking for funding for the program. But it's portable. So in other words, we don't have to have it in a setting of an academic institution. We could have small groups or pods, I would call it, of individuals that go around and do expressive therapies, after being trained about how to do it. Because the important thing is the relationships. The important thing is getting to know the person. And the art is a tool. It's an important tool, but it's a relational based program.
Okay. Lori, do you have any questions regarding the program, Bringing Art to Life?
I just think that sounds really exciting. But what are the kids' reactions to it? Are they wanting more of it? Are they leaving? Are they leaving feeling fulfilled? What's their reaction?
Lori, almost to the person, and we've been doing this course since 2011. So we've had maybe 150 or so kids here in Tuscaloosa, plus the 20 in Chicago. Almost to a person, they're transformed. It impacts them. In fact, we've published some research on some early data that we have, and we know that the program has an impact on measures of empathy. So we know the kids are more empathetic compared to other coursework that we've used as controls. We know that it changes ageist attitudes. It improves attitudes toward aging and the stigma associated with aging. We know that it gets the kids in touch with themselves to a greater degree, and it also decreases stigma about dementia. So we know those things, and to read the writings, if you look at the early writings of the kids the first few weeks and go through to the end, you can see that it has deeply impacted them. It has made them more compassionate. It has made them understand that the personhood lives on, and that they'll never walk by another person and not speak and not interact and prejudge that person. They just won't. So it's been very powerful for us to read that and to learn that.
Wow. Now, is this just in Alabama, or is it throughout the nation?
No, it would be able. We'd be able to do the program anywhere. We've got a manual that we've created about how to do it, and we've got the opportunity to do online training and that sort of thing. So really, it could be done anywhere with a little funding and that sort of thing. But yeah, we want it to get out. We feel like it's a good program, and there are other programs that are like this out there, but this is the one we can help with, and we've got some expertise in. Angel Duncan, who is our executive arts director at our foundation, who's an art therapist, has had just a leading role in creating this program, and she does a lot of the training for the arts-based interventions She's in Florida, but we work very closely with her.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, that is absolutely fantastic. That would be something I think that would be really interesting for the new Dementia Resource Directory, Care to Plan, that is in beta testing right now, too, to help connect people to various resources and things. I have that on my website, alzheimersspeaks.com, if people go to the resource directory. But that would be a great program, along with everything else that you're involved with too. I think that is wonderful. I don't think there's a better way to shift mindset other than to go through kind of the heart and to really get people connected and see, like you said, the true personhood that's there and exists, and that engagement at that level is so powerful. So powerful. So thank you for bringing that to life. That's very cool.
Absolutely.
And I think not only changing the mindset, but also working with the young people before they have a mindset, while they're still open to change, is so. That's just so powerful.
Yeah.
The intergenerational component, yes, is so powerful. And the other thing is, Laura, you mentioned mindfulness and wellness and holistic stuff. We teach the kids that too. So we have a mindfulness part of the course, and one of the things I didn't anticipate it happening is that they become more in touch with themselves through this process. So they not only develop relationally with another, but even with their own identity. So mindfulness has a wonderful role to play, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it really gets them in touch with that, excuse my voice, the power of one and the effect that they have on others. And I think it just automatically makes you look inside at how am I coming off, how am I being perceived, because you're looking at someone else in a whole different light than maybe you would have before. So I think that is great. Now, you also do a lot with faith and spirituality, and the book Seasons of Caring is just absolutely fantastic. Can you talk about that as it pertains to dementia care as well?
Absolutely. The longer that I've walked down this road, the more that I realize how important the spiritual aspects are to both the care partners and to the individuals living with dementia, I think, from talking to them and interacting with them. And Laura can add more to that, I'm sure. But I've been fortunate to be able to work with Faith United Against Alzheimer's, Clergy Against Alzheimer's, sections of Us Against Alzheimer's, and have met people like Linda Everman and Don Windorf and Dr. Richard Morgan and others who have been so influential in my own journey. But I really think, from my experience, the care partners that have been the most resilient and have had the most to offer on this marathon are the ones that have been able to make the connection, spiritually speaking, and to put on put on your gratitude glasses. In other words, look at the world and the situation a little bit differently if possible. I never will forget, and this has been so powerful to me, Dr. Jim Houston, who is the former regent or former founder of Regent College in Vancouver, and a wonderful theologian, and so lived with C.S. Lewis for a while at Oxford. But his wife lived with Alzheimer's disease, and he said, I've learned to look at this as something that is going to bring out my best as I try to provide care for her, and it's a reciprocal thing. We have to receive as we are giving, or we'll burn out. He said so many wonderful things in an interview I did with him that have continued to influence me. But the biggest things are to have the eyes to see and be grateful that you are able to provide compassionate care, and therefore receive it back for yourself, and just value this human being. I could go on and on about it, but it really has invigorated my calling and my teaching and everything, and I share this openly with people. I think it's so important. The Seasons of Caring is just a wonderful volume, a multi-faith volume of meditations that's been written by members of many, many different faiths. And it's very inclusive, and each of them has something to say that's very helpful.
Wonderful. Lori, what are your thoughts regarding faith and spirituality in dementia?
I totally agree with what you've been saying. And in fact, in my dementia community of so many friends around the world that have dementia, and in my dementia mentoring, you can almost tell the people that are going to go down quickly based on their entire attitude. Those that have no faith and are just miserable, ungrateful, and woe is me, poor me, are the ones that are going to go down quickly. The ones that continue to find gratitude in every day, that continue to try and make a difference in the world, that continue to find things they can be productive on, and continue to say, God, I know you're walking with me, are the ones that are going to last longer. Their cognitive abilities are going to hang on longer for the most part. I think attitude as a whole, both your mental attitude and your spiritual attitude, has such an impact on your entire life.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you there. I know, dementia can be a tough road to hoe. I mean, I don't think anyone will argue that, but there are gifts wrapped in everything. And when you don't feel alone, when you feel that, there's a power larger than you at hand, for me, I know I find a lot of comfort in that. And I know that people believe in a lot of different powers, and some people don't believe in any. And, I'm not going to get into an argument over that. I think everybody has to do what they're comfortable with. But I just find it really, really, really helpful to fill my soul, and to sometimes just empty it too, and just let everything out in a safe space where I know I'm not going to be judged, to release those feelings so that I don't go, just boo-hoo crazy. And to know that there is a lesson, there is something to learn. That was probably one of the biggest things that my faith has given me is always that there's a reason. I might not always like the reason, but there's always a lesson that is very helpful, not just for dementia, but for everything I do in life that can be applied to that. And when I look at those stressful times, and I go to God as kind of my balancing act, and to bring me some comfort in terms of what's my lesson, that I feel like I'm really participating in life, and I'm learning to share with others what I've learned, because I think there's so much power in that as well. And that's one of the reasons I think I just love my job so much. It's just such an honor to talk with so many people coming from so many different lights within the world, to make a change, to be open, to be able to be authentic. I think we've lost that ability in society at large for people to be authentic. And I think this disease, in some really strange way, is helping pull people back to say, you know what, none of us are perfect. It's okay to talk about who we are in totality. The good, the bad, the ugly, because we all have those days, we all have those moments. And I think it's something that's needed. Danny, what do you think, regarding, the faith and spirituality? I mean, I know kind of your thoughts, you'd shared that, but have you seen any research to kind of hold that up, to maybe give people strength to go on? Has that been researched?
Yes, it has to a certain extent, and I can't quote name and study for you very much, but I can tell you that I'm aware of data that shows that there are more uplift for caregivers, for instance. There are more uplifts caregivers perceive uplifts if they remain spiritually connected, if they're members of a faith-based community, if they pray or meditate, that sort of thing. I can't quote studies right now on people living with dementia, but I know the data is out there and it's growing. You couldn't see me down here, but I literally I felt like I needed to jump up and down and in affirmation of everything both of you were saying, because you uttered such truth about this, the authenticity piece. We talk about stigma all the time. Well, a lot of it is a lot of us are we're afraid to be authentic ourselves. We have to be able to look at ourselves and see our own conditions, see our own problems, and see our own limitations if we're going to be able to deal with the limitations of others. And so we try to, the students and I talk all the time about, listen, you've got to see yourself as somebody who also has needs, and you've got to be able to present those needs in a trusting environment so that you can then see this person who's living with dementia with clear eyes, and we need to be able to talk about this openly, and authenticity is a big part of that piece. And so I'm glad you mentioned that. The healthcare providers don't necessarily embrace that authenticity a lot, and I think that society, puts healthcare providers on pedestals and expects them to be perfect. Well, guess what? We're not. I mean, I'm the first one to tell you I got many faults. We could talk for the several more shows about those. Let's not, but we could. But I'm telling you, I believe what you said. Authenticity is important.
Well, that's yeah. I think that's just kind of a big bugaboo, like I said, in society, and that's one of the things that I've noticed, and I think all of us have noticed, that the relationships become so deep so quickly because people are talking about real life, and things that a lot of times they don't even share with their own family or friends because they don't feel safe. And yet when they're with like-minded people, that comes about, and that's a pretty cool thing to be able to happen. Can you talk to us a little bit about the culture of compassion?
Yeah. So this term came up, and I'm not the one to coin this term, but the term came up for me when I was interviewing a man that I just mentioned, Dr. Jim Houston, in Vancouver in 2012. His wife, Rita, was living with dementia. He himself, a brilliant theologian who is now coming to terms with this dementia spiritually. And he talked about how if society believes falsely that we can continue to take care of everybody that needs to be taken care of in facilities and pay for that kind of care and such, we're living a pipe dream. But we have to begin to embrace a culture of compassion. And by that, I think he meant efforts that you've talked about already, efforts to end stigma, efforts to develop a dementia-friendly culture, elements to educate healthcare providers about how to appropriately interact with people, enable those with dementia to live well after the diagnosis, lobby lawmakers about increasing funding for not only cure but also care. All of these things go into what I talk about as being a culture of compassion. But the heart of it, for me, goes back to each of us as individuals and how we do the things that we've been talking about in this show. How do I look at myself and bring my best self to the task of trying to help someone live well with dementia? How do I look at this human being as a person that has value and dignity despite this diagnosis, and how do I get that word out? Because I think a lot of healthcare providers, the underlying problem, Lori, is that they don't look at this person as being a person who's still there. They don't. With the loss of some cognitive capacity, a lot of people look at that person as being less than now. Well, if we do that, then we're not going to be advocates. We're not going to be champions. We're not going to be saying, no, we have to increase funding. So we've got to change that, and we need to start with young people. We need to get them in relationships with people living with dementia, because if we do, it'll change them. And the deeper the relationship, the more they'll be changed. And then they'll come out and say, of course we have to advocate. Of course we have to increase funding. These are people with much to offer. And so I think it begins right here at home. Danny Potts has to say to himself, yep, you know what, I'm seeing that person with different eyes now. And Lester, thank you for giving me that. Buddy, thank you, Pop, for giving me that. That's what I want to say to people. It has to start at home. Then it'll be organizational, and then it'll change our culture.
You know, I agree with what you're saying. I think one of the other things when we talk about home, a lot of times people think, and I've seen this over and over, and I'm sure both of you have too, where the care partners know the person has dementia, but they don't share information with the rest of the family, and that includes the kids. And I know this is happening because when I go out to schools and talk, the kids will say, you know, everything has changed. I mean, because it might be grandma and grandpa's moved in with them, or just that mom and dad have to spend more time over there, so priorities within the household have changed. But kids aren't allowed many times to be part of that change. We feel like we're protecting them from this disease, and they want to be part. They want to help, but they don't know how if we don't have conversations with them and if we don't allow them to come to the table. So I think when we're talking families, we have to talk all ages. You know, I'll use my daughter as an example. She, you know, she'll be 28, and she only knew her grandma with dementia. You know, my mom had dementia her whole life, but they were like two peas in a pod. And, you know, my nieces and nephews, not so much did they know their grandma like that. So they had a very different interaction with her. And,
right.
You know, so I think it's really important because the kids need support too, because the structure a lot of times of the family has changed or the priorities have changed, and they need to understand why that's taken place as well.
Right.
And
right.
what they
and
can
at the heart
give
of
back.
That is yes, and at the heart of that is destigmatization. I mean, here's the elephant in the room. We're not addressing it. We have to destigmatize, teach the kids, get them on board. I often say, if the adults could get out of the room and leave the person living with dementia and the kids in the room together, they'd all be friends and having a great time, you know, without us.
Yep.
I think somehow we enter that room with our prejudgments and our need to control the situation, and we actually do harm in many ways.
Oh, that's a great example. When my daughter was in I want to say it was in kindergarten, I remember going in for one of her reviews, you know, conferences, and the teacher's like, oh, you know, she's just so good with the other kids, you know, and there was a couple of them that were disabled, and one was in a wheelchair, and one had a different type of disability. And she's like, oh, your daughter's so special. And I just looked at her, and I just laughed, and I said, what are you talking about? I said, she doesn't see what you see. She just doesn't see it. She just sees them
right.
like everybody else because we haven't taught her to do that. And that had never occurred to that teacher. You
right.
know, that we were putting people in boxes, and we were the ones that were segregating people because of the way we acted. And I think that that's a huge lesson for us to learn as a society and as family.
Right.
Lori, you've probably experienced some of what we're talking about. What are your thoughts?
I wanted to make a comment on the dementia compassion. You talked about looking inside yourself. My husband and I have talked about this, and as a care partner, there are times when he has to also look inside of me and help me to bring out the best in me, because there's times that I'm too confused, I'm too tired, whatever, and I'm not able to do that. So that then becomes his job to not only look inside himself, but to look inside me and help me to pull myself back out again. And hopefully that's going to be done with as much passion and compassion as possible. But that's also an important aspect, I think, is as a care partner looking inside that person, seeing what's left. What is there? What can they accomplish? What can you pull out of them?
What a great insight. Because that is what a true compassionate care partner is, that they're not just thinking about themselves, but they're helping communicate when the communication needs a little assistance, and doing that in a respectful way so that you're still involved in the process. And I think sometimes we don't always give care partners the credit for that, but that makes a huge difference in the relevancy of our relationships and how other people even view those relationships. You know, I know when I see a care partner assist their loved one in that manner, it just, to me, it's truly leading by example. And I see it in the memory cafes so often, where people will like, oh, I didn't think of doing it that way. You know, and it might not be said, but there's usually a comment afterwards of, wow, that was powerful to see and to watch and to know that they can too do it that way.
Yes.
I think that also goes along with the common misconception when people meet a group of us with dementia, and they go, oh, you can talk, you can walk. There is a lot left inside of us, and hopefully we within ourselves and our care partners are going to help us to continue to pull out the strength and the abilities that we do have.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, that is so powerful, and you know, one of the things we talk about with our students is finding the pillars of personhood. That's what I call them, the elements of the human being that are persistent and there, and these abilities, these personal elements, characteristics that are there, and we can build on those, focusing on those. And I love the scene in Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me, when he's in having his mini mental status examination, and he can't answer any of the questions, but after one of the things he can't answer, he says, but I can play a guitar. Well, sure you can. Play it, man. You know, sure you can play a guitar. He himself came out and said, I can do this, because the focus was on the negative, and I thought that really spoke to me. You know?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of like with Pat Summitt's son. I had heard that, you know, he was in there when his mom was getting the test done, and they said, well, of course she doesn't know math. She's hated math. She's never been good at math. Ask my mom about leadership. Ask my mom about basketball. Ask my mom about stuff she cares about. She can still answer all those questions, you know, and participate in the conversation.
I have to tell you, my bias. Mm-hmm. My bias, Lori, is against. I mean, I know we have to assess our patients, and we certainly do that. But I'm biased against a lot of the testing. You know, one of the things I've gained, because I've got gray hair and I've been doing this a while, is the clinical acumen to be able to assess somebody by talking to them and interact with them and talking to their families and that sort of thing, without putting them through a lot of things that, again, add to the stigma in the office visit. So that's just part of my bias with it. But anyway, maybe that's not good clinical care. I don't know. But anyway, I want them to have a good experience in the clinic. So.
No, I agree with you. I remember when my mom went through the testing, and it was so degrading to her. She was so depressed and so low for a long time. It took a long time to pull her kind of out of that hole, because she felt really beat up and exhausted, and she had 2 half days of testing, and it was hard to even get her to go back for the second day, and it was hard for us to even want to bring her back, but we felt like that's what we were told we needed to do, because it was just so difficult on her. Lori, what are your thoughts on testing? That's kind of an interesting concept.
I don't know that I'd call it interesting. I'd call it grueling. I remember I had one day that I was 6 hours in testing, and with like a 10-minute break for lunch, which was a candy bar, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Every time I went for testing, yes, you feel so degraded because what do you focus on? The things you didn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
You focus on the things you did wrong. How many quarters are in $6.25? When I couldn't answer that, even with using my fingers, I went in the car and I cried and I cried and I cried. And the next time I went in, I said to him, go ahead, ask me how many quarters are in $6.25 because I've been saying it to myself every single night. And that was an answer I never again forgot because it had such except I can't remember it now, but I normally don't forget it. It had such an emotional impact on me that I literally cried half the night. I was so upset I couldn't do that. I was the vice president of a bank, and I couldn't tell them how many quarters were in $6.25. The whole way you feel, and then okay, let's talk about drawing the digital clock or the analog clock.
Mm-hmm.
How many people use an analog clock anymore? Of course,
Right.
It's becoming foreign to us because our world is digital. When they tell me to do 10 after 12, I want to write 12.10.
Mm-hmm.
And the testing is first off, it's very antiquated, and secondly, it sets you up for failure. It sets you up to feel like a failure and to leave there, and the next time you come back, what are you thinking of? You're thinking, oh, my golly, what am I going to mess up on this time? You're not thinking about how good you're going to do. You're not thinking about them finding an answer. You're thinking about all the things you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And with very little compassion from the person giving it most of the time, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, interesting conversation today. I can't believe our hour is just about up. We've got about not even 3 minutes left. Danny, are there some others or anything else that you would like to leave our audience with today?
Well, one thing real quickly, Lori, this is one of the reasons that I'm very glad that technology is giving us some really good diagnostic testing that can be more accurate and actually in the end game more compassionate, with MRI and FDD PET and all that. So I think this is one thing that where technology is going in the right direction here. No, I'm really privileged to be on the show. I've really enjoyed talking with both of you today. That we've hit on some very important things. The older I get, as I've said, my priorities have changed and my way of looking at things has changed. And I want to help people live well with this. I want us to be able to find cures. Don't get me wrong. This is so important. But I want us to be able to help people to live better and live well with the diagnosis. We're not going to give up on people. We need to encourage care partners. We need to bring out the best in folks that are living with the condition, and we need to teach young people through intergenerational programming, like we've talked about today, all the things we've said here, so that they can go out and change the world and make things better. Let's create a culture of compassion. And my hat's off to you and Lori for everything that you're doing to help bring this about.
Great. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on our show. And if people want to get a hold of Dr. Potts, you can email him at info@cognitive-dynamics.org. That's info@cognitive-dynamics.org. And Lori, any last comments from you?
Just what a privilege it has been, and again, both of you, I just think you're both wonderful. I hope together we can all continue to express to doctors, in particular neurologists, how important it is to have the compassion and to listen to the people you're talking to.
Yes.
Good words of wisdom there. That would be a wonderful. That's our 2018 intention there, for us to all come together and really work as one collaboratively to, like Dr. Potts says, change to a culture of compassion. when it comes to dementia. I want to thank everyone for being with us. And again, have a great holiday season, and we will be talking to you in 2018. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. It was
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.